Hey everyone, welcome to today's session of the Marine API community. We have real nice things coming along during this session, so let's get started. As usual, I'll give you an introduction to what our community is about in case you're not familiar with it. Then we'll start the topic of today. At the end, we're gonna get our Q&A, but feel free to raise your hand or share a question either in the chat or in the Q&A if you have something that comes along the way. So for now, those who might be new to our community, welcome to joining us at the Apigee and Application Integration Community at Google Cloud. This is meant to be a global network for you to keep on learning and adapt to the new things coming along to these both technologies, and so that you can feel that you have people around the world that you can rely on in different spaces such as this call that we prepare for you and through the Google Cloud community forums and articles section. With that, the usual rules for this session is that we're going to have tech talk presentations timely from our Googlers experts that are going to present content to you. At the end, we're going to have Q&A in which you can bring topics either related to the session that has been presented on something different that it's still, it has to do with Apigee and application integration, or all things API and all things application integration. We're going to meet every Thursday at this time with some exceptions for holidays, of course. And these sessions are recorded and we share them through the Google Cloud community and on the YouTube channels of the Marine API community. Keep an eye on that in case you miss some of our sessions. You can catch up at any time. And if you'd like to be a speaker in this space, we would love to welcome you to present your knowledge to the community. So if you'd like to do so, feel free to reach out either via the Google Cloud community or any other means that we may see fit. For now, as a reminder, you can always leave your questions in the chat or in the Q&A section, or just raise your hand and then you'll be able to open your mic so that you can engage with us. Today, we're going to be having Tyler to be a speaker today, and he's going to walk us through updates on the Apigee API Hub so that you can get exceptional developer engagement with metadata. So for now, welcome, Tyler, and thanks so much, everyone, for joining us.
Yes, thank you so much, Alex. Hi, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well today. I hope it's sunny and warm wherever you are in the world. So let me share my screen and we can dive right in. Yeah, I'm super excited to talk about this today. It's one of the coolest subjects that was presented at Next, last month. And, diving into of course, agents, but also how we can utilize APIs and agents together in using API Hub, basically, right? So let me just go into slideshow mode. Yeah. So to start off with, I have some just some background information on API Hub for those of you who maybe aren't familiar with it or haven't used it, just to give an overview of where we are with it and what's new. Then I'll be diving into what all of this metadata in API Hub is good for, right? Are there limits? What can we do with it? And how can we utilize this with agent space, with the agent development kit, with any types of clients, basically, right, who want to get access to our enterprise systems and data in a secure and managed way using API Hub, right? So there's some new features to help with that, and I'll have a demo as well showing how we can connect that with agent space. Just to give you an overview of where we're coming from with Apigee API Hub. With most customers we work with, there's a wide variety of APIs in their organization, right? Every API is designed to deploy differently in different clouds, different protocols. This makes the security risks just higher, right? Because if you don't have consistency across how APIs are deployed and managed, then there is more potential for attacks and risks to come up. And the different APIs are not utilized or leveraged or reused effectively, right? In most organizations, APIs are one-off things. They're used for point-to-point integration. They're not leveraged and reused effectively in the organization. So that's exactly what we're trying to address with the hub with the API hub here in the middle of our Apigee architecture. As you can see, all the runtimes are different, right? There's Apigee X, there's Apigee Hybrid, there's different clouds, there's different on-premise runtimes. So we're intentionally putting the hub and the collaboration aspect separate, right, into its own service called API Hub from the actual runtimes themselves. The design topic is a separate topic, right? How do we design? How do we publish? How do we deploy APIs? So this is something that usually is connected to the runtime and the management system, and that's a separate topic for itself. Then, of course, all of this runs on Google Cloud or Kubernetes or your own infrastructure, and the features around publishing, monetizing, integrating those APIs, and how can we connect all of that together really effectively, right? This includes third-party tools. So how are services and APIs developed with Visual Studio Code, and where's the source code repository? How is compliance monitored? How is API quality measured, right? So these are all things we can connect into the hub ecosystem. And so this is exactly what we're working towards with the API Hub vision in Apigee. So API Hub was released GA late last year in December. It's gotten quite a few updates since then, has a very active development and roadmap. So a lot is happening in this space, and we're really keen, for customers and users to try it out and give feedback and help us shape the story for API Hub going forward. And again, here you can see at the bottom, putting all of the gateways and infrastructures and clouds and everywhere where APIs can run. These are just sources for metadata, right? That we can either get pulled or pushed in real time, or synchronized through batch processing or ingesting basically into the hub platform. Then we catalog, collect all of that, catalog it, add metadata to it, so categories, ownership, life cycle information, and then based on that data, we can scan and recommend and offer actions to take on these APIs, right? Also showing, making it easy to connect them into apps and agents and different use cases that can be leveraged and API first based on the APIs in API Hub. And so we also kind of see this as on-ramps. How do we get data and APIs and analysis into the system? And what are the off-ramps? What can we use that data for? All of that metadata, right? And I'll go through some use cases and some ideas today, and keen for any questions or ideas from the community on how this could be useful. So the first principle of API Hub is to organize all of your APIs. So we auto-import them from Apigee. This is done automatically, or you can connect any GCP project to your API Hub instance. You can on-ramp through APIs, so you can push actively any APIs you might have into the system. And then it's not just the API definitions, right? This is all data around security results, test results, custom linting. You can add custom attributes in free text, enums, JSON. There's just tons of ways to add color, add depth, add information to the API definitions. And this can all be very useful, as we will see in a moment. The attribute system in API Hub is also very powerful because you can also extend the entities themselves, right? So attributes can be attached to the API objects, but also the deployments and the versions of APIs. And everything is indexed and searchable, right? So in the background, we use Vertex AI search so that you can do natural language search over all of the metadata around all of the API assets in API Hub. Another really cool feature, in case you haven't seen this, is the event support for API Hub, meaning that anytime an action or an event occurs, we can subscribe to that using Event Arc in GCP and trigger integration flows or any custom code or scans that should do something based on that API update, right? A new version 2 has come in, here's a deployment, here's a specification. Let's do a scan to check that our security standards and the linting is done automatically, so that we get a quality score for that API. And this can be super interesting if we're ingesting APIs from third-party gateways that we might not normally know about deployments, right? So if teams are doing DevOps and they own their own API platform and in AWS, or they're using some other gateway, it's actually super powerful to have a single place where API updates get entered and broadcast as events that you can subscribe to or do stuff with, or just have an overview about what's going on across the API landscape. Regarding the the types of data in API Hub, and this helps us reuse and maximize those assets, right? So of course we have the API objects themselves. This is something like customer API, orders API. So this is the big topic itself. Then we have multiple versions of that, which is very cool to have versioning, because for any midterm to long-term planning, there will be multiple versions of APIs, right? That's just normal. Versioning of APIs is an art and a science itself, right? And very happy to go into that topic as well if there are questions, because that's a very important topic to make sure that versioning makes sense for the API context. And then for each version, we have actual deployments. Where is this version running? Is it running in Apigee? Is it running in AWS and other gateways, other clouds? And then, of course, the spec or specs or any other assets to that version, right? So based on those data assets, when they start coming in and get updated, we can then have our actions that can create extensions, publish it to our developer portal, do something based on this data, and have some quality checks in there as well. So this is really an opportunity to bring transparency to the whole API lifecycle and API pipelines that might be running in different systems around the organization. Another cool topic is supply chain and dependency graph. So this is something that was recently updated as well in API Hub, giving us a visual representation of the dependencies between APIs, and not just the APIs themselves, but the operations in the APIs, right? So which operations use operations from other APIs. Currently, you have to add this metadata yourself to say, hey, get customer also does a call to get orders, right? Whenever you're fetching customer data, it retrieves the orders as well. But in the future, we're working on auto detecting that as well, right? So using network scans to also, auto make these links as well. So currently, I think testing this out just by configuring it is super useful and interesting. And then in the future, having more and more of this automatically recognized and entered will be super useful as well. And of course, then quality controls, right? So having custom linting or using the standard linter. When talking with customers, often the quality scan, the linting results of APIs often gets lost in the CI/CD logs, right? It's not collected, it's not easily shared or transparently available, right? And so to have a single point of truth for the quality scoring and linting results for all the APIs is also super interesting. And you can also add your own custom linting rules as well, right? So the spectral linting rules are delivered out of the box, but you can customize those or add your own rules as well. And then last but not least, doing semantic search across everything, right? So being able to search for specific operations, entities, find all of that data, especially if APIs are being auto-ingested. This might, you might not even know this stuff has come in, right? And so this gives a chance to see and to find exactly to a particular topic or a question, exactly what what's in the system and what's been registered. Then, of course, the topic of enterprise context. And I think this is just a strength overall of having an API-first approach, is that if we have APIs that use common entities like customer objects, order objects, error objects, right? That those are, if possible or always, reused across the organization, right? Because this creates commonality, and it creates that it's easier to understand the APIs, right? So if you notice that in the Apigee API, or I think across the Google APIs, the error objects are always the same format. For a developer, that is super useful, right? Because I don't have to think about what's the format of the error going to be if I get an error, but rather it's always the same format, right? Stuff like that is really valuable. If I have a customer object in different API contexts, that it shares the same structure, So this is done during API design time, that the API Hub repository is checked for common entities and automatically added to new APIs. So this is also super useful and cool, something that I think will become more and more important as the API library grows and more APIs. And when you're getting into tens and then hundreds and then thousands of APIs, this can really help to bring some consistency and reusability across the organization. That's another reason why APIs sometimes are not reused, right? Is because they have different formats, right? A customer in system A is not the same as a customer in system B, and that's something you can start aligning using tools like this. And that's where Gemini, of course, also helps, right? Is when you're designing APIs, that it's building those or generating those API specs based on enterprise context, right? So that's something you can very easily do with the Gemini Code Assist plugin in Visual Studio Code, or via API as well, right? So you can search that enterprise context for objects. Good. So if there are any questions on any of those topics, that's just getting to know API Hub. If you haven't had a chance to test it, please do, and reach out and let us know what you think and what potential you see for bringing some organization to the API landscape. And if anyone has questions, just jump in anytime, or we have time at the end as well for Q&A. The next topic I wanted to get into a bit is extending API Hub, right? So often that's also the power of good solutions, is how can you add your own plugins, your own functionality on top of the standard solution. And this is built into the architecture at the base level, that you can extend, of course, the blue boxes at the top are the built-in first-party integrations and deep Google integrations to Apigee X, to Hybrid, to Edge, GCP. We also deliver and are working on additional integrations for things like OPDK and Backstage. And then looking at third-party and having an open interface that any partner, any customer, anyone can add plugins into the system for their own gateways, for their own systems, for anyone who might be able to use the events, developer portals to get updated. I think there's lots of potential here for interesting integrations and interesting extensions on top of the core API Hub catalog and functionality. So I think that's one of the coolest parts, and really looking forward to exploring extensions and additional gateway connectivity, right? So seeing APIs get automatically added from any type of different gateway that might be running on premise, or in a totally different cloud or somewhere else, that will also make it super interesting. And you can add those gateways as types in API Hub super easily, so that when their data starts showing up, you're seeing exactly, hey, this API is coming from from AWS or from Kong or whatever, and you can track that usage as well going forward. Cool. So with that, let's go one step further to the ultimate extensions, right? Getting into Agent Development Kit and ADK connectivity. So this is all pretty new, but is really shaping up to be powerful and super interesting. So if any of you have followed the ADK announcements and the Agent Development Kit stuff that came out of Next and has now been released more and more onto open source and also in the blog posts, the Agent Development Kit is an additional framework for code-first agents, right? GCP already has no-code agent functionality with conversational agents. That's also available in Agent Space, right? That you can create your own agents just with prompts and configuration. But this is an additional Python-based SDK approach to adding more powerful custom agents into the platform. It's also very interesting, of course, when you're looking at MCP and the different protocol standards that are out there, that for me, this actually helps make MCP more useful, right? Because the MCP protocol is very let's just say, specific to adding services to agents, but like in a point-to-point way. And the agent development kit is a nice library on top to help organize all of that, right, into a tools model to be able to more flexibly compose agents with tools. And these tools can be from MCP servers, but they can also be from APIs, or they can also be from the built-in connectors, right? So Agent Development Kit, I've been working with it for the last few weeks, and I'm really impressed with the flexibility and how it helps me solve problems when designing agents. And we're so early in the agent journey, right? I think that's, everyone's kind of just, discovering as we go along, what do we need to build truly useful agents, right? And not just the chatbots of yesterday, but rather agents that are actually useful and will be used and adopted and valued by users. And so I think ADK is shaping up to bring a lot of value there. It's also model agnostic, so you can use it with any underlying model. The tool library, including API Hub and other options that we'll get into, is super interesting. And also the agent engine, right? So making it very easy to deploy the agents into Google Cloud, either in Cloud Run or in Vertex AI. So I've been playing with that as well. And that is also very nice to have, the deployment model in place to help with that. So here's an overview of agent space and the ADK. So where does ADK fit into agent space? Agent space, of course, is the overall conversation product that's new in Google Cloud. That's brings a lot of functionality and connectors with it. The default agents that can do search, they can do a lot of actions. Compose emails and search calendars and Microsoft SharePoint and all kinds of stuff. Then the custom conversational agents playbooks, which is the no-code stuff that maybe you've done in the past with conversational agents or using dialog flows tools, and this is now a more powerful version here within Agent Space directly. So it's very easy to create your custom agents using the just using the console. And then a new option, right, is building ADK agents, running them on Vertex or Cloud Run, and leveraging connectors and tools, right, to different ways of getting access to data, right, in a secure and scalable way, and a managed way, right? So I think in some previous sessions, we've seen some demos with integration flows, integration connectors, all super interesting. But today we're going to look directly at the API Hub integration here for ADK agents, right? Why is this interesting? It's interesting because API Hub brings a whole repository of the APIs with it, and these can be leveraged very easily within ADK agents as tools. And the cool thing is that this can basically offer connectivity to APIs running in Apigee, cloud, hybrid, or even on-prem. Why not? Or any API gateway, right? Because we've separated API Hub from the gateway. So this means that the API Hub tools can bring access to all of these different environments, which is super cool when you think about it, right? So it means that my gateways can be running in all different places and all different clouds, where which is common, right, these days, as we saw in the API Hub value proposition. And so bringing that metadata into the agent world with ADK tools for API Hub, I think is really, I've been talking to colleagues about this and looking and with customers, and it's really kind of very, very interesting possibilities opening up here, especially when you're thinking about enterprise data that's still on premise and not easy to integrate agents with that data, right? It's not, there's no connector already into agent space like, with cloud services like BigQuery or Google Drive. This is on-premise data that's locked and not accessible to these types of apps or experiences. But through APIs, we can establish that connectivity, and we can index those APIs in API Hub and provide the language to have those available as tools within our ADK agents. So that's the possibility. So I'll get into a demo of this in just a moment. One additional aspect is, okay, how do you discover and use these ADK agents? The concept here is to have an agent gallery in agent space. So this is basically a place where all custom agents, so both from the conversational playbooks as well as from the ADK agents, all are available in the organization in a gallery that you can easily add these custom agents to your agent space, right? And this will be really interesting to see how this develops, right? So it's basically, today we have app stores. This will be an agent store within agent space. And so that's why it's really interesting to, dive into this now, get prepared to publish agents into these types of, galleries or marketplaces, and think about the marketplace of tomorrow is how, these agents can be easily added to our different conversational experiences. And it could be that this kind of merges with apps together, that apps and agents kind of, become one thing or connected, right? That, any app is also available as an agent and can be easily accessed through, the agent space or conversational, as well as, voice and a multimodal ways. So super interesting. Of course, apps, so, are based on APIs, and that's just a fundamental way of getting access to existing data and services. So this, I think, is developing into a really cool story and architecture to continue to develop out and test out together, right? Cool. So with that, let's dive into a demo and take a look at how this is set up and can be used. So you should see my GCP console here. I have a project Apigee Hub demo. So let's jump over to API Hub. It's under the Apigee tab. And if you go to Get Started, you get the welcome page. And here you can register new APIs. You can attach Apigee runtimes in different projects. And then we have some statistics about what's in our API Hub, right? Which is really cool, right? So how many APIs? What are the business units? What are the types? REST, maybe GraphQL, SOAP. What do we have registered here? Which teams are publishing APIs? Who are the target users, right? Partner, public, team, internal, and what's the maturity level, right? So this is super cool data to get. And now if we jump over to semantic search, we can do a search. So I have some APIs here around energy management. So I have renewable energy, resource planning, asset management. And so I can very easily find any APIs, versions, or operations, right? So which type of operations work with renewable assets, right? So renewable certificates, and so on, right? So we can find lots of detailed data just based on search. If we jump over to APIs, we can see the entire index, what's registered. So here we have quite a few APIs registered. Let's open up the renewable resource planning API. And you can see that this has been published, who owns this API. So Maria owns this one. This is from, particular business type. And these are custom attributes, right? So this metadata we can add at the hub level, and all APIs can feed this data in when they are registered or discovered, right? So, for example, which regions is it available in? What's the GDPR relevance? What's the business type? Links to the documentation. And then the very important sub-objects of versions and deployments. So which versions do we have? And those have deployments associated with them as well, right? Here at the version level, we can have compliance, accreditation, lifecycle attributes that are not filled in here, as well as more custom attributes. We just have one custom attribute that this came from the marketplace. All of the APIs that are processed are broken down into operations, right? So we can see exactly if they're REST, what methods, what objects and paths. And we also have, of course, the specification file or files that belong to this version, and the quality linting results, right? Do we have errors? Do we have warnings? What's the quality of this API? Also, the deployment, where is it deployed? So is it in Apigee X? Is it in hybrid? Is it in on-premise or in different gateway or different gateways potentially? And so this is all metadata with this API. This API metadata we can maintain here under settings. So we have all of the attributes, including the system attributes, but also the user-defined custom attributes, right? And these are all associated with different types of resources, APIs, deployments, and so on. Exactly. So that's our baseline. So this is all the APIs we have registered. Let's take a look then at the portal where this API is published. So this API is published in this marketplace portal. Let's go ahead and sign in. So this is where users can find the documentation, more information about that API. It happens to be in the Energy Services Hub. And so here we have the renewable resource planning API documentation, where we can also subscribe and test out the API here in the API documentation, right? So if we create a subscription to that, and this is just normal, API management stuff, we have a subscription and we can test the API here in the browser with our credentials, right? So we get a list of different projects and resource planning data from this API. So that's the standard functionality, basically, of API Hub and how this can be published in different portals. With that, let's jump over to ADK, so integrating this into an agent. So you should see my Visual Studio Code window now. And I have an API Hub agent that I've created here using the instructions in Getting Started from the Agent Development Kit documentation. And basically, you can see here exactly how we can connect a tool to this particular API Hub asset, right? So every API Hub resource has a name in API Hub, and this is basically a URL, right? It includes the project where it's registered. It doesn't have to run there, right? The API could be running on a gateway, who knows where, but this is the hub project and location that it's registered in, and then it always has a unique ID for the overall API. So when we create the API Hub toolset object, we have to say, okay, for which API do we want to create this tool? We can also give a specific version, or we can just give the overall API URL or resource name, and it'll take the first version that it finds. And that's about it, right? So these URLs for the APIs and API Hub are the key. That's how we link them. And as a next step, basically, I would like to start testing, having an agent that can dynamically load these API Hub entries and, basically offer, agent integration to all the APIs in a particular API Hub instance, right? So that'd be quite easy just to load the registered APIs via an API call here and then create tool sets for each of them and add them to the agent. Of course, for most APIs, we need some type of credential to access them. So in this case, to access this particular API, it's an API key in the header, in X API key. So we need to supply the agent with that as well. So how can it authenticate to the API to do requests? This would also be super interesting to test out with different ways. Could an agent get a credential itself, or using OAuth flows, or different ways would be next step to test that as well. So this is our tool setup. So super easy. We don't have to import a spec or do any manual configuration. We just link it here directly using the API Hub tool set. The next step is to connect that into an agent. So basically, you just create an agent, give it a name, which model should it use, right? So we're using Gemini 2.0 Flash. What's the description? What's the instruction? Here we're just talking about renewable energy projects, and we're feeding in the tools from our renewable API toolset, just one tool at the moment, to get this agent up and running. And that's basically it, right? So here we could also add additional tools to lots of APIs in API Hub or um, the application integration flows or application integration connectors, right? So this is exactly where we would add tools to be offered in this agent, right? And of course, agent space. So these would be agents that we could publish to the agent space gallery, and that users could add to their own agent space environment. Good. So with that, let's test it out. So if you remember here in the developer portal, we did a call to the resource planning Git and got all of the data here. So it's basically just data around energy projects. Let's do the same now from our agent tester. And we started the tester here. You just started with ADK Web, and it'll load the agent and all the tools and offer it in a web interface here. So let's jump over to the web interface, and yeah, let's just start. And here we can select exactly which agent we're going to talk to. I'm going to talk to the API Hub agent, and let's just say hi. And let's just ask it, can you give me a list of all the current renewable energy projects? And so you see that it figures out we need to call the API, the energy resource planning API to get that, and then it gets all of the data, right? So, and of course, first of all, it's just giving me a text summary. We can see here the exact, the flow of what it's doing here. So the agent going to this API and exactly what it's doing as it steps through the processing. Okay, so the API came back. There's the response. There's our JSON data that we also saw in the developer portal. So it's really super cool to step through the processing here. And then you see, okay, then it generated this text that was given back to the user, right? So it's really easy to kind of figure out and see exactly what the agent is doing and how it's using which tools, right? So let's ask it to, can you put that information in a table sorted by status? So it already has the data, so it doesn't have to retrieve it again. So that's something I think is super cool when agents can, help me filter and format and understand the data. So now we have that data sorted by what's the status, not operational, under construction, and planned. And then we can ask it to give me more details around solar farm alpha. And it'll go get more details around that specific project, right? And then give me the summary of that data from the JSON object, right? So it's very handy to explore an API conversationally and no other coding or integration required, right? Just adding that tool, connecting it to my API Hub object, and it takes care that the latest spec is synchronized and all the conversational aspects just work. Good. So that is how easy it is to get up and running with Agent Development Kit, ADK, and adding API Hub tools, API Hub tool sets. Let's go back to these slides. And exactly, this is kind of where we can see this area under ADK agents for integration, for connectors, and API Hub is really an area of enterprise agent connectivity, right? So this is where we can get access to lots of types of data that would not normally be available to the agent space or agent world, right? So this is opening up a lot of doors, a lot of possibilities. And I think especially with API Hub, where we can connect to any API, right? Legacy, modern, cloud, on-premise, right? So this is opening up a lot of possibilities to connect to that, some of that core enterprise data, right? That's not going to be easily accessible through the default agents or any other method. So I'm really excited about this possibility. So with that, thank you very much for your attention. And we have time for Q&A if there are any questions.
Thanks so much, Tyler. No questions in the Q&A or in the chat, but everyone, you're all welcome to raise your hand and open your mic. In the meantime, Tyler, I've just opened the poll for everyone. So if you want to share your feedback with the session, you'll find the poll asking how satisfied you were with this session. So please go and take a look into it. And yeah, as usual, you can always reach out to us through the Google Cloud Community Forums. So in there, you'll be able to engage with us. To make any questions, you can always do a recap of the session because you'll find it available, the recording. And if you'd like to go in deeper into the feedback of what kind of topics or concepts you would like to see in these sessions, you can scan the QR code and share it with us. These are some of the latest articles we have shared with you. Some of these are very related with AI and something that already is mentioned, Tyler, which is the Agent Development Kit, as well as some other guides and tutorials and best practices for you to get a hint on how to best use these technologies at Google Cloud. As usual, in this deck, you'll find the hyperlink so that you can go directly to the contents. And with that, I'm going to make a pause just to double check if there are no any questions from you guys.
And also, in case anyone has ideas or how to take this further with which types of APIs and data to test this, just reach out. We're always happy to help test things, build demos, test things out with projects. Right? We have lots of test resources and API Hub instances and everything needed. So invitation for anyone with some ideas and would like to take a closer look to just reach out. We're happy to do that together.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Tyler. As you know, and like I mentioned, we have those forums at your disposition both for Apigee and application integration through the Google Cloud community, as well as the cloud product articles in there. We have a lot of new content coming along the way. We'll see you for this session on the next Thursday. And if not, we'll give you a notice so that you can plan accordingly on which session you would like to attend. With that, I have other interesting events. If you're in the area, if you'd like to join us, if you have a colleague or someone will be interested to know more about API management fundamentals that is in Japan, you're more than welcome to help us spread the word about this session that's going to be happening on May 29 at 1:30 p.m. Japan time. And other great events that you can be able to get to know our team in person are the summits that we have right around the corner. Those in Latin America. In Argentina, we see you on May the 27th. In Mexico City on May the 27th as well. And in Monterrey, Nuevo León, Mexico at May the 28th. And for those in Madrid, we'll see you on June 19th. It's going to be a great opportunity for you to connect around the Googlers and the experts and updates we have to share with you, both for Apigee, application integration, all things AI, and all things and security. Rafa, I'm going to take a look to see if there are some API or integration related events over there in Racine, and I'll keep you posted. But thank you for raising your hand. Alrighty, team. That's it for us. Any more questions or comments? I guess that wraps it up. Thank you, Tyler, for this great presentation. I hope the audience find it valuable, and we look forward to see you next time, everyone.
Yes, thanks everyone. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.